budget meeting. And I guess just to start, I've had a couple of questions about what's the meeting about, but all it is just so we have enough time to discuss stuff. Last meeting we had was an hour long and the presentation was about an hour, and we felt that there wasn't, we need to discuss some of the stuff. So that being said, I guess, Mike, should I turn it over to you, or?
Sure. I guess I can try to pick up where we left off. So there were a couple questions, so let's maybe go through some of the questions we've got since that last meeting. I got two questions from the chamber. One was a request for funding this year of $3,500. That's $1,000 more than the year we're in, 2020. So their budget request for support is $3,500 this year. That's one thing you'll need to consider. The second request from the chamber, Cindy at the chamber, was for fireworks, and she wanted to confirm that there was a $15,000 amount in the budget for the city's contribution to the fireworks effort. Okay. Maybe let's move to council questions then. And I got a couple questions.
Actually, can we talk about the chamber first a little bit?
Sure.
You said last year the budget was $2,500 and now it went up to $3,500?
That's correct. That's the request. I have $2,500 in the budget.
For this year?
For this year, their request is $3,500.
And what are those funds used for?
For the chamber?
Yeah.
For their, just to run the chamber, it's support for the chamber.
And is there any conversation about why it went up almost 30% or 25%?
There is, and I'm trying to pull the letter up right now, so.
Okay.
Go back, TJ. Where'd you put that?
And then, Mike, the next question I would have is, what did we budget for the fireworks this year as opposed to 15 for next year?
I put 15 in there. That's what it's been for the last few years.
Okay, so that's flat. That's
Yeah. Bear with me, technical difficulties. All right. So, let's see. You want to look at the chamber letter?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the letter I got from Cindy. Wait till we got our meeting. And so, I'll let you have a second to take a look at that. Make it bigger so you can see it.
So am I reading that just the workload? I mean, there's been a lot of increase this last year.
Well, it pretty much says it all right on the second paragraph from the bottom. It says, we're requesting your continued support for the operation of the Welcome Center, and because of our continued hardship, request $3,500 for the year 2021.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
Yep.
So that's an adjustment I'd still need to make in the budget. And the second one was the fireworks budget of $15,000. So what do you think of the first request from the chamber for an increase of $1,000 in funding?
I'd recommend we do it. As she said, they've deferred charging companies that couldn't pay or businesses that couldn't pay. And I think the chamber is a good place that people stop to hear about Cross Lake.
Could we give them funding through that COVID?
No.
Undue hardship for, they're not taking in their memberships and stuff?
No.
No? Okay. I don't have a problem with 3,500.
Mike, question, where does this show up in the budget?
It just shows up in,
Is it lumped into some other number?
it is, it's lumped into support for other agencies.
Oh, okay, all right,
It comes out of general government.
all right.
What page is that, Mike? Is it under donations?
I'll get back to you on where exactly it is, Marcia, in the budget.
So I would support that additional for the chamber too.
Okay, so do we have a consensus? We'll put it in then,
I've
or?
heard two,
I agree with supporting it.
now it sounds like. Mr. Schrupp, did you, yeah? Sounds like it's a go.
That's not allowed, is it?
Okay. So what do you think about the fireworks then? You want to leave that at 15,000?
Yeah, I mean, if that's normally what we've done, I continue to do the same. I would support that.
Okay. Other comments on it?
I think it's a good amount of shekel. I do think the fireworks bring a lot of people into Cross Lake, and it's something that residents also are used to having, and as I said, visitors also come in and look forward to that. You get a lot of boat traffic, so I think there's a lot of business done in Cross Lake, compliments of the fireworks.
I agree.
I agree also.
Okay.
I agree.
So to answer Marcia's question, on the most recent budget packet you have, it's on page 32 of 40, and it's included in the amount down towards the bottom in donations to civic organizations. Okay? Let's move to the questions I got from the council members since our last meeting. I got 3 questions that I think I copied everyone on email to. Questions from Dave Schrupp, John Andrews, and then just a comment from Aaron. So has everyone had a chance to review my responses to those?
Yeah, I did.
I have, yes.
Okay, were there any questions on those responses?
Yeah, I have a question, and maybe I don't recall it right, but that 50,000 in general government capital outlay, I noticed that was taken out according to your questions, or maybe I misunderstood where you were going with that.
Sure, so let's pull it up. Oh, we gotta go down here, sorry.
I think it had to do with that 25,000 in civil defense and 25,000 improvements, and then it was budgeted in general government at 50,000. I think it's page 13.
Sure, so what we did was when we did the budget for the year that we're in, remember a few years ago, we had some pretty significant expenditures for storm damage. We had always had a placeholder in there in prior years for, we're probably going to need to replace a civil defense siren at some point, but we never did it. So the question was, should we have a contingency in there or not? And at the time, the council's decision was, yeah, we want to have a contingency in there for a what if. What if there's something unplanned like a storm where we'll spend thousands of dollars in overtime or whatever it is. So what I did in this budget, I mean, I kind of got the, you didn't say this, but I got the feeling that we didn't want to have a contingency in there, so I took it out because the council's general consensus at our first meeting was I'd like to see the levy go down or stay at least flat. So that's one of the things I took out because it wasn't identified to a specific project. So I took out the placeholder for it, okay?
But was the civil defense siren budgeted for like this year, so wouldn't it be carried over into, it's already in the levy?
No, we didn't buy one. We put a contingency in. If we needed one, we had the money to do it.
No, but it was in the budget,
Yes.
so it was levied,
Yes, it was.
yes. So I think we need to redesignate it or either designate it as civil defense for future, is my opinion.
All right. So the other part of the question, and we'll answer that when we get to John Andrews' comments, was when I looked at this, one of Dave Schrupp's question was, how do I know, I'm talking specifically about capital, how do I know if something is in the budget for a levy item or it is meant to be paid for by debt? And so what I try to do is all the operating type things, I'm assuming they're being paid for by cash or current year levy. The big items, meaning things over $500,000, $250,000, things like that, the assumption is because they're one-offs and they're not recurring items, it probably makes sense to have a debt levy for it. So I offset that with debt. So I put a placeholder in the budget for here's what the amount of any debt levy might be for that expenditure, and here's what the expenditure would be, which is equal to the levy, or I'm sorry, the debt issuance, so there's no impact on the levy in the current year. The impact would be on whatever levy we needed to service the debt. The other thing we look at is we look at our cash on hand at the time we issue certificates, because sometimes if we have those extra funds that we didn't buy civil defense sirens for, we use that to reduce the size of any future debt levy, okay? So that's a long explanation in there. But what I did was, if I take out all these items, and if you remember in our levy package, we started at about $6,015,000 up here with capital outlay, whether it was paid for by levy or whether it was paid for by new debt. So if we take out the placeholder for storm damage and sirens of $50,000. We pushed to the future the 66 sewer extension. We pushed to the future the biosolids project. We also, in talking with Ted, he's not seeing that he needs to expand the salt shed building. If you remember, a few years ago, the building was improperly loaded, and we were looking at it, it had moved quite a bit. And so Public Works and the county reloaded the building and to try to twist it, if you will, back into plumb, and it's pretty close right now. So they're using different procedures to manage what they put in that building. And I think you're using crushed granite now instead of sand. Yes. So that was part of the issue. It's quite a bit heavier. So if we take those things out, we get our capital outlay down to $3,510,000 right down here. And then we look at how is I going to finance this up here. The current thinking is we would issue a special assessment bonds for roads of $997. We would issue an equipment certificate. Best guess today is $1,129,000. And then we would take out the items for the sewer bonds for the 66 sanitary sewer extension and along with the biosolids. So total new debt in the most recent model would be $2,126,000. And then the items that were carried over from the year we're in right now. Now these are all items, I'm looking at Department 4300 right in here. These were all items that the city, this would be the city's share of the estimated cost of doing this project with the county. Now what the county has done is they've said, they put a lid on everything because of COVID, and they said we're not going to do these projects, so we're not doing them either because we're not going to get reimbursed by the county. They're improvements to the building. So when you look at this, you have to ask yourself, what if we still need to do the project? Is the county going to pay us back for it? Now, Ted's had some discussions with Rob Hall at the county saying, look, if we can't pay for it, would you be willing to carry it over and we can reimburse you in a future year? We haven't done that yet. That isn't something I think you'd probably be interested in doing, but if we have to fix something, we're going to have to fix it, just so that's out there. So if I take all those items out, we levied, and remember, we reallocated the gates at the Public Works facility to pay for Perkins Road. So we're taking that out. So that means we've got about $154,930 of money we already have for projects that we can carry over to next year, which means the balance would need to be paid for by levy. Would either reduce the amount of debt by projects we didn't do, or we'd use it to offset any levy and carry it over to a future year and reallocate it. So that's how I balanced that out, right or wrong. But that's my understanding of the thinking was from our last meeting, okay?
I think that we need clarity on what has been levied and what hasn't been besides these sheets. We should be able to look at the budget and be able to tell that. I think that was a question in somebody's email too. I would be all for establishing a capital projects fund and
Okay.
have those designated in there so that we know that those have already been levied, and that's where it would come out of, is the capital projects fund.
Right, and we do that, we assign that. The only time we actually legally assign something is if we have a contract to perform that item. These are things we haven't done yet. So you remember, last year we issued bonds. Well, those bond proceeds were designated for a specific purpose. So those are legally set aside as designated fund balance. It's restricted for that project. The council has the discretion to assign or unassign projects they levy for that they have not completed. And that's what the $154,930 is in this year's budget. It's projects that were levied for that didn't occur. So to answer your question, what's levied for in the budget and what is not? What's levied for in the budget for capital is everything that you're not financing with debt, with new debt, and everything that you haven't not carried over from a prior year. So in this model, you've got $3,419,000 of capital expenditures. You're planning to use $154,930 of existing funds that are not in the levy, and you're planning to use $2,126,000 of new debt. Okay?
I understand all that, but I'm saying that it would be very clear to everybody if we had a capital projects fund and those projects were designated in it.
Yep.
So
So noted.
can I make a motion that we establish a capital projects fund and start doing that?
So I'm confused on what that means, or what are you?
You would have a
It's
total.
just another way of tracking what we're already doing. So for what I would suggest, I mean, in government accounting, the theory is you have as few funds as you need to keep track of your operations. What I would suggest is what we're already doing, rather than set up a new fund and then go through the major, non-major fund calculation and reformat our financials. We can do that internally. In fact, we're doing it right now with the City Hall project and the Fire Hall project. We keep it in a separate fund, and then for financial reporting, we combine it. We can still do that without creating a bunch of new funds. That's easy to do.
So I know you haven't done a new sheet, but does this leave all of these changes, if we accept all of those, are they leaving the levy flat
It gets you to about zero between this year and last year,
compared to last year?
compared to last year. Now, that'll change if you issue debt. Prior to year end, we'll need to put a placeholder in the levy for any debt repayment if you end up issuing certificates. Aaron, go ahead.
I'll second the motion so we can continue discussion. We had a motion, and it was
Yep.
never seconded.
I guess what I'd recommend is I would keep it as an internal item and then just combine it with your general fund for financial reporting. That'd be the easiest thing to do. It's relatively easy to keep track of. What I wouldn't recommend is setting up a fund for every project that you do. We already went through that with prior stuff.
I'm not asking you to set up a fund for every project. I'm asking you to set up a capital projects fund.
We already have that.
Subtotal, the designated, like civil defense, 25,000. Your total in the capital projects fund would be, each project would be designated to that particular thing that we levied for. I don't
They're
know.
already designated in the general fund.
But we can't see.
Just
Now, I
for
know.
clarity, is that what you're saying, Marcia, just for clarity? Easy, yeah.
Yes, I'm not
This
asking.
is all very confusing to me, and it's above my pay scale.
Well,
I'll be the
we
first to
do
admit.
keep track of all of that, so if you'd like to have a one-on-one for your understanding, we can do that.
But I think, don't we want the public to know? If they would sit down and look at the budget, they wouldn't have a clue. They would need those internal documents. And if you had a capital projects fund with the total there, and then it subtotaled for each project that was already levied for, and those funds are designated and set aside for that project, that would be pretty clear to the public and to the city council, because I don't think the city council really knows which ones are levied and which ones aren't, except for your little sheet there. But if we look at the budget and we have a capital projects fund listing each one that's designated, it'd be pretty clear.
So I'm not getting through. I think what you're asking for is more detail that already exists, and we'd be happy to provide it. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, I get lost real quick with this stuff. And if we could break it out, and I think I've asked before, when are bonds getting paid, when do they expire?
And I
So when
provided
do we
that to
clear
you.
up? You know, well, see, I don't even know that you have, because I can't find it.
That's in the packet. That doesn't, they show in the packet eventually.
Yeah.
They're in the back.
I think he's asking about the
He's asking a
schedule.
different question, just so we're clear on it. After this meeting, I'll forward when every bond payment is due with a schedule of payments, so there is no more confusion, all right? So you have a motion and a second on here, on the table. And this is the discussion part, so
Okay, so, and the motion is to set up,
The capital projects fund to designate the levy capital projects that aren't spent in the same year, that if they're designated for that project.
now remember too, that at the end of each year, you'll need to make a motion to reserve those funds, because at the end of each year, under our current policy, is all budgets lapse and they're not carried over unless there's specific action to do so.
I guess that would be a recurring motion then.
okay, and the purpose of that is just for clarity. So,
Yes.
you got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
So just so you understand, what you've done is you've created another fund in your set of records, and it'll have to be determined whether it's either major or non-major and reported accordingly. And we'll need to think about changing our policy for that fund, because right now our budgets do lapse at year end, and that is standard practice, so, okay? I don't personally think it's necessary, because we can show that today and combine it with the general fund for simplicity. But that information's available and very easy to provide. All right, let's move on. So we've talked about the comments for what's in and what isn't. So let's talk about fire truck purchase. So one of the things we discussed on Monday, Ted and I had a meeting with Melissa Barrick of the Soil and Water Conservation. And the purpose of our meeting wasn't to discuss a plow truck or a fire truck, but potential funding did come up for if we were interested in purchasing a plow truck or replacing a plow truck. There's an opportunity for us to take advantage of some funding with Soil and Water Conservation for the SALT application system. they'd be willing to support us in the amount of around $20,000 for that. So the question you've got to answer is if you are in fact going to purchase a demo truck for 2021, the time to do it is probably now. You'd want to get that thing up and running and get used to driving it and get it in place before the snow flies. If you don't do that, and you say, well, we're going to do it in 2021, it might not be there and it might cost more, and you won't have the funding for the salt thing. Go ahead, Ted.
What she offered to us is if we have the new controller, which is a Force 6100 controller, and what that does, it meters the salt out as it goes. It actually weighs it and meters it. Soil and Water is behind this program, so we use less salt. We're not trusting that the equipment is just, it's actually metering it and recording it into a computer and sending us a download back. So we know that we're accurately putting it down and not wasting the product. That they would contribute $20,000 toward that. The demo unit truck that I had got spec'd already had that controller on it. So it would be a benefit to us to, you take basically the 215 and take basically 20,000 off the top of that truck. So.
And what is the cost of that truck that you had spec?
The cost of the demo truck was just shy of 215,000. It's like 214 and something.
So it would net out to be 195?
About that, yes, sir.
I'm a real fan of us monitoring salt because we think as citizens that too much salt's getting put on the roads in the winter. I don't know if it's true or not, but we are concerned about the salt going into the lakes because it gets into the ground and runs off. So I'm very much for it as soon as we could do it. Thanks.
She offered up that us and Ideal Township are both looking at purchasing a truck in the near future, and she offered up both of us this $20,000 apiece.
So Ted, it's a demo truck. Is it a year old? Has it got a few miles? What's the demo portion of it?
What it is that it's Boyer truck. It's a Western Star body and TBI controls. And what it is, they bought 3 trucks as they call their demo units for this year already, and one of them was already outfitted and Mission got it. The second one isn't being outfitted as we speak. It's got less than 1,000 miles on the truck right now, but they're calling them their demo trucks, and they're willing to let those trucks go right now at that pricing that we're talking about. It was closer in the state bid to $250,000 if you look at the state contract versus what the demo units are going for.
So is this 195, is that truck completely set up, ready to go?
Yes, everything on it. Only thing we put in it is our 2-way radio.
So is that under the state contract?
Yes, it is.
And then are you going to trade a truck in for it, or are you going to
Well,
keep
that's
one?
that's the question. We have a 2007 Mack that everything on it is getting worn, and last time we traded a truck in, we got $5,000 for it. They aren't worth much anymore. Then we have a 2013 the International. International from 2006 to 2015, 16 had a bad batch of engines. And many cities, counties, townships, and state got stuck with these trucks. We have one of them. It does not like the fuel systems in them. Every time we go out to plow, all of a sudden the truck will it's all the pollution control. It'll just bog out. It's not regenerating and getting hot enough to do the regeneration. And twice last year we had to take the truck into St. Cloud to Manny's to have this piece done. And it was a little over $4,000 each time they had to redo it. The trucks aren't worth much for trade-in right now, just because of these bad engines. We could try trading in and we get what we can get out of it, but we aren't going to get very much. The truck that we had before this was a Ford L9000, and Mission Township, my suggestion was the council is don't sell it to anybody outright. Let's trade it in with as part of the package. They gave us a little over $5,000 for it. And Mission Township took it out the first plowing, and it cost them over $5,000 before they got it out of the shop. It was well used, and our trucks we're not abusing them. It's just snow plowing is very, very tough. You try to get that 15, 17 years out of them, and
So right now, you've got the '07 truck and the 2013 truck.
yes,
That's what you have, and your pickups.
and our pickups, the 1 ton and the one pickup plow. So, and the park has a pickup plow also.
Ted, which truck a plow truck would you remove? You're talking about both of them right now. Are you going to get rid of the orange one or the blue one? The blue one's the older of the two.
The
big
blue one's
trucks.
older too, but truthfully, it's a better truck. Just because of the motor, the problems we're having with the motor. But the other thing is we've just plowing snow last year. The torque of that between the engine and plowing snow, the orange one actually has a twisted frame, and it's got to go in to have to get DOT'd and get back on the road again. It needs to have the frame rails straightened again, so it's got to go to St. Cloud to a big truck frame shop.
And that is the International, the 2013?
That is the International, yes, the 13. Got to realize these trucks, we're not abusing them. It's just plowing snow is very, very tough on a truck. So that's when you get out of the truck, and for a day later, you still feel like you're plowing because the vibrations are still going through you. So
So you're recommending what?
right now, I'm hesitant. I got to think about it a little bit more.
Okay.
I haven't thought about, that we're going to get into this right now, or we're going to trade one off right now. I thought we were going to be doing this after the first of the year, and I'd see how the trucks started out the season, and I'd be worried about it in the 2021 more. So I got to think about it a little bit, which truck would be the
Yeah.
better one to get
I
rid
was
of
just
right now.
thinking that, if you don't get much for them, it might be worth just to keep them as long as you don't have to. I don't know if you have drivers for all of them.
Well, what we
You
would do
gotta-
right now we're the three guys, two of them will get in the big trucks, one will take the 1 ton, and we've got plenty of the small roads where I could take the 1 ton and the 3 trucks could go out and just get it done that much faster too, so, which is less wear and tear on the overall on the truck.
Yeah.
So when's the best time for demo trucks for snow plowing?
You mean to purchase?
Yeah,
Well, we purchased one in the spring and we purchased one in the summer before.
you get a better deal in the spring and summer?
No, we just happened to hit, the last one we bought was 133, the one before that was 115, so they've gone up quite a bit, so.
So there's nothing to say that there wouldn't be a demo truck next
After the
spring or
first
next
year,
summer?
it all depends on the season. If we start out, we got a lot of snow, there won't be any left. They'll be grabbed up right away.
At least if you buy it now, you get to use it relatively quick. Otherwise, if you buy it in the spring, it'll sit for.
I also like that we have the potential of metering salt use this year.
Yes.
So you could keep the salt count down.
Dave, we don't want to use the truck before December.
God.
Marcia, you tell us we don't want snow? Ice but no snow.
Ted, what else do you have?
Either.
What else do you have on the public works side of the purchases that you're looking for this year?
This year we were going to replace one of our pickup trucks. We have a 2007 utility box that we inherited from the phone company, and we were going to trade that, or sell that truck outright and try to replace that. When the state bidding program came to be, and this is right after the first of the year, so we went to the dealers that has the state contract, and there was no trucks available. Essentially, the state of Minnesota had taken all of the allocation, and there was no trucks available. Here in the last 3 weeks, another dealer has been approved as a state contractor. So we still could take that $51,000 that we have allocated in this year's budget and purchase another pickup that are still in this year's budget, so. The other thing is we have a tanker truck that, it's an old fire truck that we purchased, well, it was John Moingen that purchased it for us. So it goes back a little ways. It's an old Kenworth stub-nosed, you've seen it around town, yellow truck, 3,000-gallon tanker on it. It's seen its better days. It's not even to get it
What's the
DOT'd.
purpose, what do you have it for?
We use it for the cleaning of the sewers, flushing of the bridge decks. We actually used it for watering the trees, and we planted up on Manhattan. We've had to use it up there to water trees. We used it for washing off the tennis courts. So we've been trying to find another used, and I'm always the second person to find out there was one available. There's been 2 this year that we knew of that they went for a little more than we had budgeted, but that was the other big thing in our capital budget.
So you got 51,000 that you're carrying over from this year, you haven't spent yet, you could apply that towards something. We could apply that towards a new plow truck.
You could just say you're not going to get any more pickup trucks, and right now there's pretty much a truck for each of the individuals. We're trying to get it so that none of our drivers are, when we're going someplace, and I know it's silly, but with the COVID, we don't want drivers riding together. The county's the same way, the state's the same way. They don't want people riding together. They want them separate as much as you can. So one driver, we go someplace, or one follows the other one. So even the county, patching, there's one truck following a patch trailer, and guys jumping out of the second pickup and jumping, shoveling, and patch. So
Well, that's gonna all be over in November, so.
how's that? It's going to be over in November. I mean, truthfully, I'm asking you, how is it going to be over in November?
My opinion.
Okay, well,
Can I ask, I probably missed it maybe, the sweeper for this year was 50,000 and it's carried over to next year for 50,000. Are you not purchasing a sweeper?
we were told by the dealer that we have a better sweeper than what was available on the market today. And there was too many bugs in their design, the new design of the sweeper. So they told us to hold off and wait a year or two to see if they get these bugs worked out before we go purchase another one.
Okay, that's one of the cases where we've levied for the sweeper 50,000 and we're not purchasing it, so that would go into one of those, into that capital fund and designate it as a sweeper, because you're still going to do it, you're just
We
putting
still
it
need
off.
to replace it, it's just,
And it's already been levied for,
it
so
was just, we were thankful that the dealer was honest with us and said they just had too many issues with them, so.
So carry those funds forward, is what you're saying.
yeah, put it in that projects fund and designate it for sweeper. And so are you going to purchase a pickup? I didn't quite understand. You said you didn't need it, you needed it.
Right now, there's another dealer. We have been in contact with the dealer, and he was supposed to have gotten back to us with all of the pricing. And I'm hoping at the next regular council meeting that I could come forward with a price so we could go ahead and purchase that truck this year, if you'll allow that.
Okay, so then I just have one more question about the trucks. If we purchase this demo truck, and it's not budgeted for in this year, is it coming out of reserves, or where's it coming from?
Equipment.
You'd have to decide if you wanted to combine that with another asset purchase, or you'd have to pay for it out of reserves this year. If you don't issue debt for it, if you don't issue a certificate, it'd come out of reserves. And what you'd need to do is we need to have to figure out what any debt payment, related debt payment would be on it in 2021 and budget for that instead.
And when do you pay, if you do equipment certificates, do you start paying off those certificates in the same years that they're issued?
If you issued an equipment certificate in January, your first payment would probably be in August. You'd make an interest payment in August. If you issued one in August of this year, your first payment would probably be February.
Okay, so do you take that into account when you put, you bring in, say you have the $900 equipment certificates, and then you have $900 in expenditures, capital expenditures. Where is that payment for that debt if it's in the same year?
You'd have to budget for it. It'd go out as debt service expense
Okay.
in the debt service fund.
Did that occur in this budget? I didn't notice it. For the equipment certificates that you're proposing?
It did not. The assumption was you would issue the certificates early in next year or this year, and your first payment would be in 2021, because we're already in September. It's highly unlikely you'd make a payment yet this year. Your first payment would be in 2021. Just a question for Ted. You know, one thing you talked about too, instead of the pickup truck, you were looking at pulling forward the road patch sealer because of potential delays in doing road projects?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we have an issue with is we go get 2 ton of road patch, and by the time we get back here, the patch is cold. We don't have the ability to keep it hot. We don't have a hot box, which is either a trailer unit, or it's a unit that slips in the back of the truck. And they're either diesel fired or propane fired, and it keeps the product warm, because otherwise you get here and half of the load is cold and you're dumping that part of the load. It doesn't work with the hot batch. You can even put it in there and the next morning fire it up and rewarm that load and go out and do the patching that we need to do. So, and all that depends on, you know, how we want to keep ahead of the potholes, or we're going to keep using, right now we use cold patch. We buy bag cold patch in a pallet at a time, 64 bags. It works until you get lots of rain and the traffic pounds it back out. Just like the county's doing, they're using a lot of cold patch and it pounds it out, so.
I'd like to see us be able to do the hot patch. To me, the cold patch is a waste of time, basically, although I know it patches up holes, but it doesn't last.
I mean, it always seems like to be at the same spot, whether it's a county road or a city road. Sometimes it'll move down the road just a little bit from that, but what is happening is the water's getting in and around that patch, and it freeze-thaws, the freeze-thaw cycle, and it pops the road the next spot.
So
I
Ted,
think we could do a better job if we had the trailer and could get hot mix in there and make it stick and do a better job of patching, so. More pliable too. It's easier to maneuver in the hole.
Have you ever approached Anderson Brothers or somebody and asked them what they would charge to do that? And not have the trailer and not have the...
We have had Anderson Brothers, and it ends up being very expensive because they stick on mobilization and mileage and all kinds of things like that. We've had some bigger patches that they've come and done, you know, something that gets a third, well, right there on Wilderness. They did a couple years ago, they did a patch for us. The product was, if you looked at the size of the product, it was probably a quarter what they charged us, and they charged us over $5,000 to do that patch. Because they had to cut it out and haul it out and then re-put in new class 5, and then the big thing was mobilization they get us with, which could be $500-600.
And that was a one-time deal.
It was a one-time deal.
You know,
Yeah, like I said, it gets very expensive to have them come
I
and do
don't
it.
know if there could be an agreement with them just to be the people to go to for patching. Because it costs $5,000 for them to do it. It costs the city a significant amount too to have all that stuff and do it also. And I don't know what those numbers are. But
Well, the thing with the patch trailer is once we have one, it's going to last us a number of years. We're probably talking 20, 25 years of life if we take care of that piece of equipment. We're going to have it around for, you know, so it's just a matter of going and getting the patch, and you're paying $500-600 for that load of patch, and it goes quite a ways, so.
yeah. What do you roll it with then?
What's that?
What do you roll the blacktop?
We have a vibratory plate compactor we have. We did have at one time, we had a 1-ton roller. It was well used as something we inherited from another municipality that got rid of it, and it's just worn out. The bearings, nothing on it is worth replacing. So right now
you take a packer.
we use a vibratory placker on them right now, and it does a good job.
What is that machine cost?
They're almost $40,000.
For the patch trailer.
A patch trailer, yes.
And is that something you were looking at, trying to get this year?
Well, it was one of the things we talked about reallocating. You know, we talked about the sweeper. Maybe the sweeper wasn't available next year. We reallocate that money towards a patch trailer.
So in the next month or two, we'll find out more. Is that what you're telling me?
Yep, it's month by month as things are changing. I'm even trying to find a demo patch trailer. There's been a few of them that have,
Yeah.
with the Cup Step is one of the big manufacturers in Minnesota that does those things, so.
Yeah. Okay. I'm good with that.
Don't run away, Ted. One of the other questions was on the timing of the road project on 66. We talked about that on Monday too, and one of the things we talked about was, you know, we have some grant money for storm sewer purposes, and because of timing issues, it may or may not be possible for us to use the grant money for the project, and we were looking and trying to we've already asked the agency if they'd be interested in an extension for that project. They were thinking maybe a year and a half, which would get us to the end of 2022. But the problem we run into is the grantor agencies have rules too, that if the recipients don't spend the money for what it was intended for, or you don't have a project, there's nothing for the entity, meaning the city, to have cost reimbursement against. So the point is you have to decide to do a project to get the grant money either way, and then you could probably work out the timing, do some of it, cover some of your costs, and whenever the project is. And working with the county, they've actually got the project in two places. In their highway improvement plan, it's listed as funded by sales tax reimbursement to the city in 2024. And then there's another placeholder on the county, and I'm not sure what that one is for, but it was looking at that same road, some improvements on that road post 2025. Now, what we've talked about in the meantime, you've had conversations with Phil Martin, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it, but there's a storm sewer underneath that road too that the county put in 1978. And so the current thinking is, what should they do with the storm sewer? Because there's potential for quite a bit of conflict with the sanitary sewer and the existing storm sewer. Does that capture what they had?
Yeah, that's almost verbatim. We did ask Melissa Barrett for if we can get an extension, how long we could get an extension for. We have us and our engineer, Bolton and Mink, have had conversations with the county when they're going to do the 66 project. It's 2024 is what they told Phil. As far as how much sewer that's affected with the project, as far as the sewer, there's about 1,900 feet of storm sewer that's in the ground today, and about 1,700 feet of that would be affected because the sewer is so deep. You'd have to remove the storm sewer and then put it back. So the question is, because it's a 1978 in vintage, does it get replaced with new rather than old? That's a question to the county. As a city, we don't feel that should be our cost to take and put brand new pipe in for the county. So that's one of the questions we've got for the county. And then the next breath we said, well, what about that other 200 feet? Are you going to leave the last 200 feet in the road, or do you want to coordinate and have that replaced at the same time? So there's many details that are being talked about, worked out as far as the future expansion up to Moonlight and the storm sewer and, well, city sewer and storm sewer.
I have a question, Ted, about the storm sewer. Doesn't the county, is there an established percentage between county and city for storm sewer? And what is that?
It just changed, and I can't remember right off the top of my head. I'd have to get back to you, but it literally just changed in the last month and a half, their reimbursement policy. But we're still saying that this is over and above that policy because, you know, you've got an old asset there, and eventually you're going to have to replace that asset. Has it reached its life expectancy? And, you know, we look at a sewer as designed for 30 years of life. The equipment in the sewer plant is designed for 20 years. A road is designed for 20, 25, something like that, as we're trying to get out of a road. So county is your storm sewer to its life expectancy, and you would have been having those costs anyway. So we're just trying to get these things worked out ahead of time, so we don't have all the questions and we're arguing about it in the middle of a project, so.
We haven't heard from Phil Martin at a meeting for quite some time. Is he carrying the ball with that? With the
Yes, in
county
fact, Shar got a copy of the memo that the update, it'll be in the Public Works pack where they're at. They're about 90% complete with the design of the sewer and the storm sewer, according to his email he had. He will actually be at the Public Works meeting.
Yeah, no, I know.
Phil, are you here? Can you unmute him? Phil, are you available?
I am. I'm sitting here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. The mayor's
Sure.
asking where you're at with things. Can you give him a quick update?
Mr. Mayor, I am carrying the water on this project, even though you haven't seen my face. I'm listening in today to just give you a quick update. We actually have met with the county on this, and I'll just make sure you're aware. We're planning to have the 90% plans done in October so that the county can do their final review on the project. We have a good alignment. We just have to assemble the plan.
Are you going to be at the Public Works meeting, Phil?
I believe so. Being moved to Tuesday night double dips me on meetings, but I'm going to try and drop the other one to be at the Public Works meeting.
Okay, I just haven't talked to you for months. I'd like to kind of catch up where you're at.
Sure. Like Ted said, the biggest thing is when you have pipe that's 18 feet deep and storm sewer that's above that pipe in close proximity that's 6 feet deep, it can't hang in midair, so it gets impacted. But I'm confident we'll be able to work with the county now that they realize the scope of the impact to come up with a solution. Obviously, they're going to take the stance that, you know, it's your project, you are kind of impacting our pipe, and, you know, we didn't intend to do it. But in the next breath, they acknowledge that there's a benefit to getting a brand new infrastructure in there, and that they should come to the table to talk about how we should all get along and get this thing done.
Yep. One other question. What was the grant amount? Was that 250 grand? Is that what that was? 350?
I think it was 315, Dave.
15.
315,000, yeah.
Yeah, something like that, and then the city and county are on the hook to match that. You know, we need a 25% match. So if we expend all 315 or 300,000 that was granted to us, you know, we still have a 25% match on top of that. Based on our costing of this thing, we're still sitting in a good budget. We haven't exceeded it with some of these other things that have shown up with however the county wants to proceed with the storm pipe.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Phil. Mr. Mayor, Council, is there any more you have of me?
So you don't have anything else next year? The patch machine, the truck, and those are it.
That's the big things.
Are you leaving me with the truck? The pickup truck is not an essential need?
Well, the truck we have is a 2007. We inherited it from the phone company. It is starting a nickel and dime. We would like to get it replaced with a newer unit.
Okay, but if we're coming out of this COVID pandemic year and we're trying to cut whatever we can and we're going to try to consolidate and function, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I realize that.
And we all got to kick in and make that happen. So
I
I'm
think,
looking at 50 and 50, 100 grand. Your new dump truck is 195. I'm looking at we could get the new truck and spend 100 grand more.
this year I probably, between biosolids and sewer, there's quite a bit that's been cut out of my budget. So I'm bleeding now, so.
A lot of people.
But I will cooperate with whatever direction you guys give me. I mean, you are the authority for this, and whatever direction you give me, I will work with whatever you however you want me to do. So,
Okay.
I think that answers all the questions that Mr. Schrupp had raised in his email, unless I'm seeing him nod, so let's move to John Andrews' questions. And this one is kind of an old question. It kind of comes up where the question was from our last year's levy. You know, the question that Marcia asked was, well, if you could get by with about 3% less, why didn't you reduce the levy by 3%? That was one part of the question, which the council didn't. They said we're going to have a cushion for what ifs. And then the second part of my understanding of your question was, okay, since we did that, where did we spend those funds? And my response at the time was, well, we used them to cover the change orders for the building we're sitting in right now. So what I've tried to do with this schedule, and I'll make it larger so you can see it. Too large. So the number we were talking about was when we did the budget year that we're in, we had some funds built in there that were not assigned to a specific project. That amount per our approved budget document was $109,733. If you take that and divide it by what our levy was for 2019, you get the increase. So it's about 3% for all practical purposes. So then the question was, I want to see a list of where we spent money on the City Hall only building, so the building that we're in, and what things were not included in the contract we signed with High Tech. So I think everybody remembers what those amounts were. So let's just look at that. We had $200,000 was for design services. We had another $2,949,515.59, and that got us, that was the contract we signed. So we're at a little over 3.1 million. So if you remember back in February of this year, we approved some change orders, the council did, for the AV system, security and access control, the waste separator, flammable waste separator in the police garage, and then the handicap automatic doors, we're still waiting for installation. Those are all approved change orders that the council approved. That totals a little over $72,000. We have another change order we just found about a week or so ago, the 28th or 26th, whatever. Dave, you were copied on the email, so you have it. High Tech is proposing a change order for the bulletproof glass for the police, the plexiglass they put for separators at the windows for City Hall. There's some additional electrical outlets for both electrical and data. We needed a security controller that had previously been eliminated for the employee entrance. And then there was some additional equipment that was required for the fire suppression well, because we were basically sucking up sand. So those total just under $21,000. So High Tech should be coming to our next council meeting with the request for that change order. These things have already been installed. This was a surprise to me.
Did you have a breakdown of that pricing, Mike, or is it grouped just like you have it here?
I have there's a change order in your email that you already have.
Broken down?
It's broken down, yep.
Okay.
You were copied on it. So the change orders alone represent 2.35% of last year's budget of the increase. If you go a little further down, we all understand we've had changes. And these are the items we've identified to date. There's another $78,000 of stuff that we needed to make where we're sitting operational. And they're all listed there. I can send this out to everybody. When we total out approved change orders and then items that the council approved outside of the contract, we get a total of 171 for 5988. That alone is 4.3% of the budget we were referring to on how did that 2.78% that we didn't identify get used. This is my reconciliation to say this is how it was spent. So you use that plus. You know, you can see what's in there. The phone system, hearing assist, acoustics for this building. We had to replace some file cabinets. There was some other things we had to do with the Midwest security cabling. Now, we had to pay for some lightning damage repairs. There's an antenna in there. We're still waiting to hear back for some insurance claim on some of these items. And if you remember that, at that time, we had the security panel here got hit, part of it got hit. We lost a civil defense siren, and there were a couple other things that we have a claim pending right now that they're reviewing. So we may get some minor reimbursement back on that, but nowhere to the event that it would reduce this number significantly. So I hope that answers that question.
Well, that's 434 of the
Thank you.
budget. How much, what percentage of that is the total job cost here? Did you ever work that? Out of 3.1 million and then?
I didn't calculate. Yeah, I can get that back to you.
You know, I'd be
I'm not
just
arguing
interested.
that it was a
Well, I'm not arguing
significant.
either, it's just a.
I'm sorry,
it'd
go
be
ahead.
interesting to
Yeah.
see what that is,
It's very small,
yeah.
but it was an overage that we had to fund that was outside of the project. But the question I'm trying to answer was how is the budget excess that we levied for the year we're in get used? That's the question this is trying to answer. It's not trying to answer how much of the total project cost the overages were. And I can get that to you.
Thank you, that answers what I wanted to know.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. So the last council question I had from this last round was from Councilmember Herzog, and it wasn't really a question, it was more of a comment. It was, I think I've got it here too. It kind of relates to what we're talking about for certificates. And I guess I'd like Chip to address this. Apparently there's some confusion on a truck with a ladder versus a ladder truck and how to supply water and all that stuff too. So go ahead, Chip.
I think you had a question for me in regards to how to supply water or supply the aerial apparatus with water, I think.
Well, there's a lot of them, yeah. Questions is, a ladder truck to me, and the people that I know that are in the firefighting business, okay, it's a defensive piece of equipment. It's not an offensive where you go in and you protect property. Thank you. I'll repeat a little bit. It's a defensive type equipment so that you protect other property, that type of thing. With all the trees we've got in this city and all the obstructions, where would you truly use it?
An aerial apparatus would be used mostly on the bigger, larger commercial structures or the storage buildings. And like I said last time, in my capital outlay, 2021 is a replacement year for our engine 2. Mm-hmm. We have an opportunity to purchase an aerial apparatus, if you choose, at a very minimal amount. It's a good deal. I wanted to just show you a couple things. I was hoping we'd have the overhead, but we don't. So I'm just going to let you pass these around while we talk, if that's okay.
Yeah, if you would, please, that'd be great. I'd love to see it.
The one picture here is our truck right now. This is our engine 1 that we purchased in 2015. This is the demo ladder aerial apparatus that we are looking at purchasing. It's the same length. It's not any bigger than our engine. The other piece of paper I'm going to show you is, I know to replace this truck right now, if we weren't to get an aerial, to get another truck just like this, it's $650 650, and I have the quote with that, and I have copies of that too, so you can read that. Just to show another comparative price, a 2020 Pierce pumper is $850,000. So I just want to, just you can look through this, and then I can answer more questions.
So Chip, that's engine one you just showed the picture of, but engine two is what you're set to replace this year?
Yes, we're replacing engine 2.
And what year is that?
96.
How much water does that ladder truck carry?
The ladder carries 500 gallons.
500?
So when we respond to a call, we have approximately, right now we have 7,000 gallons. Our engines have 1,000 each, and then the aerial has, engines have 2, and then we have a 2,000 gallon tender and a 3,000 gallon tender. So that's 7,000 gallons.
I understand that weighs somewhere between 30 and 35,000 or tons.
In the proximity, yeah.
So if you get on my asphalt in my driveway, you're probably going to sink.
Any one of the trucks will weigh that much.
So
So actually, the aerial apparatus weighs less than an engine because it doesn't carry as much water. And your relay
it's been
pump.
around a while.
What's that?
It's been around a while.
Oh,
So what is the trade-in value of engine two?
10 grand? Maybe, I have no idea. It's 25 years old, so it probably won't get too much. 24, 25 years old. We would probably like to keep it as a reserve truck if any truck goes down, is my vision. Just to answer some more questions, the pros of aerial is you have an elevated master stream that can reach over larger buildings to focus on a fire origin or where the fire is focused. You can also use it for second and third floor rescues. It's much easier to create a ventilation opening on any structure that's burning that's large. And you have rescue lift capabilities. You have the reach with the larger structures. It flows 500 gallons a minute. We have 6,500 gallons on scene. That'll take 13 minutes for it to flow, to run out of water. But in the meantime, we have tenders going back and forth to fill. When we were at the Manhattan Beach Fire, we had 2 ladder trucks, one aerial and one platform. And they were running pretty much for 2 hours, and we never ran out of water. So the water is not the issue. The response time of having an aerial on site here is the quickness of getting it set up and being able to stop the fire before it grows. And you've heard fire doubles every minute. So it is true. Am I a fan of having an aerial? The cons of that, yeah, you have to train more. You have expenses to keep upkeep of it, the inspections. Like I said, down the road, if ISO says we need one, we may go up, we may go down. The reason I'm trying to push it for this year is because if you can see there, the cost of a new engine is $650. We're getting a demo for what is it? $879? $879. We'll never see that number again, ever. And that truck, like I said, will last a long time. It would be an engine, but if we need the aerial, you have the opportunity to use it. But on the other hand, in my capital outlay, this year we were supposed to replace a pumper in 2021.
But I question the latter part of it because of all the obstructions we have in this city with trees and predominantly trees. It makes it a difficult piece of equipment to operate, to run. And you don't have the extension to get out there from the street to the structure with the ladder.
The truck is no longer than my other engine. It's actually shorter than my engine one. We pull engine one right down the driveway of every fire, and then we relay pump from the road to the engine. You can use the ladder in very many situations. I'm more worried about the bigger buildings we have and the storage buildings than I am structures. It is safer to get firemen on the roof to do any type of ventilation because I will not let a firefighter walk on a roof if there's a fire in there.
I guess I'm questioning, we're trying to hold the line, and I'm questioning the added $200,000 expense. So you understand both?
Oh, I understand, yeah. I'm just saying I'm just pointing out to you, I understand, because originally, I mean, I'm not an aerial guy. I don't really personally want one, but
I understand.
there's a lot more training involved and, a lot more accountability on the guys that are running it and the safety precautions, but it is definitely, because yes, we have called for mutual aid, but it's too late. I mean, for example, Manhattan, if we had a ladder truck, we could have stopped it at unit 10 or 11 rather than unit 2, just because we would have got up there, trench cut it, and be done.
In the last 5 years, how many times would we have, I know we've used the ones at Manhattan.
High tech, what is it, high tech? Not high tech, cross tech. Cross tech, we had them there, and we had them at another, we had them at your fire, I believe.
And you were able to get up, I don't know what kind of roads you had.
It's a big.
Yeah, he has open area. Yeah, I can't recall how many times. I mean,
It was around.
but like I said, the 229,000 is a difference, but you can also use it for rescue because the ladder can actually go lower than ground level when you go extend out. And you can also, if you have problems down at the sewer plant, that can just lift the person right out. There's a lot of different scenarios you can use with it. Thank you. Yep.
And I think with the price you've got, I think we should go for it. But anyway, for discussion.
I'll agree. I think I'm looking at the safety aspects that you talked about, and I think for that kind of money, they're well worth it.
I'm also looking at long-term Cross Lake. I mean, Cross Lake is now a destination city. People are coming here for vacation, work, play. We're a destination place. We've grown up, and I'm committed to Cross Lake in the long term, and I think we need to look at that issue.
Mike, do we know what interest rates are on equipment certificates these days?
We have a range depending on the size of their certificate. The smaller certificates are going to cost you more. I did talk to Jason Murray 2 days ago about this because he's with David Drown and Associates. And I asked him, I said, last time we did a certificate, we went through rural water to get the best rate because they were able to finance a certificate up to a certain amount. So it all depends on the size of the certificate. If we were going to do this for the fire truck and a potential plow truck, we'd combine them. You remember we did that 5 years ago for a truck and an end loader and a Bobcat or a very large skid steer. So we identified all this equipment to put in there. You can do that. The reason you get a low rate is because it's a GO certificate, and it's also a secured GO certificate because it's secured by the value of the equipment it's financing. So they look at what you're buying, and then they project out the value of that, and that goes into determining your rate. But what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a range of about 2.2 down to about the 1.7 range. And again, it all depends on the size of it. It'd be over 5 years. And if you go to do that, then you'd want to back into an amount and put a placeholder, which I know people don't like, in your budget to say, here's what our payment would be, and you'd project that out. So you'd have the money in your levy to make the payment when it's due.
So are you talking about purchasing the truck this year? The fire truck? Since it's a demo?
2021, just the ladder.
Just the ladder.
Aerial apparatus and engine.
That's a demo truck though, right? I mean,
So when I
he's saying that his demo truck might be gone. Is your
okay,
demo
so
truck
I
going to be gone?
I'll give you this story. So it's a E1. They do 3 demos a year. It's not really driven. It's just a demo they slot in their construction or manufacturing of it. So this truck is scheduled to be built in February, but it's a demo.
Oh, it's not built yet.
No,
Okay.
no.
Such a nice picture. I thought it was.
Well, that was the truck that they brought up. It's the exact same truck, actually.
Chip, what's the difference between E1 and E2,
Just-
your trucks?
Engine, it's just engine 1, engine 2.
But I
So
mean, they're the same function?
same function, yeah. It
One-
carries 1,000 gallons, 1,500 gallon minute pump.
So one's 8 years newer than the other one?
No, one's a 96 and one's a 2015.
Oh,
So,
okay. So 20 years newer.
yeah. And basically, we need 2 engines. We relay pump a lot. for the longer driveways. So if we can't get 2 engines and we can't get tenders, we can't back a tender down to the drop tank. We relay pump from the road, and then the tenders drop the water off out in the road, and then you pump it into the house.
Yeah, because you get that off the pavement, you'll be calling a very large.
Yeah, we
crane
don't like to
get it
do any
out.
backing anyway, yeah.
Any of them, not just that one.
So is there demo trucks every year then? If we say we wanted to go in 2022 because of the climate of the economy and the COVID?
I can
and all
ask
that?
them, but I know, as you can tell with the prices of trucks, how, it's probably $25,000, $30,000 more every year. And on an aerial apparatus, I have no idea how much more it would be up for next year. I can ask him, but
But there'll be demos, right?
I
You're s-
can't,
oh,
he
you
never
don't know.
answered that. He just called me and said, I heard, you might be looking for one. We have one that's available. It could have been that somebody dropped out of production line, and that's how it became available. I'm not sure. I can ask him though.
So Chip, as you stated, with the ladder truck, there becomes quite a bit more training.
It's just, you have to, and the guys actually ran that truck when it came up for just a show and tell, and they ran it was the easiest to run. So all of my firefighters are fire apparatus operator certified, and this is just one little more step. It's just having the classes, which we have money through the MBFTE to cover those classes, just to understand the do's and don'ts of aerial apparatus operation. So it's just more things to, they have to train on, but we have a good core group of guys that are engine operators that respond to calls that when they ran that, they said it's so easy, it's very easy to run. But it's more of it's an engine. We need the engine.
Is it a liability?
I feel if we were going to, I think it's a liability when we use more ground ladders than it is to use that ladder. Because you're actually, when a firefighter is on that ladder, you actually have a harness on and you're hooked onto the ladder. You're not going to fall off. But when we use ground ladders and you're up 30 feet trying to vent a roof, they're not tied off. So that worries me more than that.
How high does it go?
It's 78 feet.
But it's 78 feet from the boom regardless. I
Right,
guess
so it's
it would be straight
probably
above,
84, yeah.
40 feet high or,
Well, yeah, so it can reach, when we were at the fire hall, we were way above the roof, and
The problem is when you drop the ladder down, you lose the height, but you still don't necessarily have the reach with the ladder. It'll only go out so many feet. and if
it
you're-
goes out 78 feet. I can bring it all the way down on the ground and shoot it in a window if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also you can have 800 pounds at the end of the ladder.
Okay.
So Mike, I have a question. And maybe you guys know, I noticed a small detail on page 15, we had some money in for elections for next year. Do we need that in there? 5,200? We could use that for paying the chamber.
I'm sorry, Dave, what page are we on?
15?
Yeah, they have 5,000 something budgeted for elections, and we don't have any elections, and
I was wondering,
yeah, that was one of my questions.
is that an accumulated fund though?
Yeah, we don't know if there's an election next year or not. There could be.
So what do you do with that money if you don't use it? It just sits there and rolls over?
It goes into fund balance and it gets reappropriated to cover deficits in other areas should they occur.
Well, the chances are that there's a special election. I don't know. I think we could reallocate in the general government funds somewhere where we could find for election expenses. It doesn't occur very often that there's an election in odd.
we didn't have any in 17 or 15.
I think it should be taken out.
And then the other question I had was, is any of the items that Chip has, or in this COVID money that we talked about, is there any of those items that we are confident that we don't have to levy for, that will get reimbursed to help pay for fire truck or whatever we need to?
The answer is it depends, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So just for everyone's information, you know, the reporting for the CARES Act, when that came out, if you got your money before July 25th, your first date of reporting would have been on August 11th. We received our money on the 29th of July, so our first report is due on September 9th, I believe. And what had happened is the Department of Revenue clarified how to do the reporting, and apparently those that did a report in August have to do them over. So what was reported in August, for people that got their money prior to July 25th, most of them have to redo their reports. So what Chip's going to talk about a little bit is kind of a big picture plan. We've spent to date through August, about $40,000 on CARES stuff, whether it's payroll related items or actual equipment. And what we're looking at is when Chip shows you this stuff, I've got all the details if you want to see that. What we'd be looking at is filing our first report for expenditures that you've already approved in the amount of about $40,000. We also received a grant from Sourcewell, remember? We applied for and we received, it was $5,000. And we're tagging some of the COVID test kits, the quick response test kits to it, to use that money, if you will, to reimburse ourselves for those COVID kits. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff, whether it's disinfectant or wipes or PPE and all kinds of things like that, that we're looking to include in that report. The other things, there's some equipment, and it's even possible we could pull a couple things out of next year's budget and have the CARES Act pay for it, then we'd make that appropriate adjustment. So go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't print out your whole expenditures.
Yeah.
The 40,000 is kind of long.
Yeah, it is.
So, where should I start? You have to qualify for this reimbursement, so it has to be related to COVID-19 and some of the issues with that. So necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency. An expenditure is reasonably necessary for its intended use in the reasonable judgment of the government officials responding to the spending coronavirus relief funds. And I can forward you all this information. I think you already have it, I believe. The costs cannot be accounted for in the city's budget, most recently approved. The performance or delivery must occur during the covered period, but payment of the funds need to not be made during that time. So we have to have these funds used up by November 15th, 2020. So the city was awarded $171,399, correct?
Correct.
Our current expenses, as Mike referred to, is $40,645.26, which included all EMS supplies, some payroll, what else? You have the list. So moving down the list, the armor antenna that was purchased for the city hall, that was on, you saw that on the overages of the building, or the additional expenses to finish the building. That can be reimbursed or put on the CARES Act funding list. It answers the 3 questions that need to be answered. So whenever you do an expenditure, you need to meet the requirements, the guidelines. Is it an expenditure incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to the coronavirus? It's not accounted in your budget, and it occurred during March to December 30th. So we have a building here, we are not able to use our radios, and we need it for COVID. That should be covered under it. So that's one item. The rest of them, you're just going to have to pick and choose what's important to the city. I mean, there's a list, and we could add more, but for example, the fire department PPE. So when we go to a call, for example, a gas leak call or a CO call or a medical, and we're wearing our turnout gear, the guys have to come back and decon it or wash it. When you wash it, it takes a full day, day and a half to dry it and wash it. So then they're out of service if they were at that call. So a second set of gear would give them the opportunity to be able to respond to calls while their gear is being washed. Public Works communication software for the sewer plant. Ted, if you want to talk about that. Oops, I'm sorry.
Chip, how much is the second set of turnout gear roughly? Is that what's here?
That's $46,000.
Okay.
Yep. About 23 something per set. 2,300.
Part of the CARES Act is communication, and the communication of that is that the wastewater system, right now, we don't have communication with our lift stations. We have 50,000 budgeted, and we're in the process of working with the engineers to get that money spent, but we're gonna need an additional 15 to 20,000 to complete all of the lift stations, and that's where the 20,000 is earmarked out of the CARES money for completing that communication with the lift stations.
And that would alleviate the regular budget then too,
Well, it's 20,000, it wouldn't have to come out of next year's budget.
because it's going to have to be done, isn't it?
It has, these are things that, we used to have a system where we relied on the phone company and their old copper phone lines. When the communications, we sold it and they went all digital, we lost all communications other than the red light that's on the lift station, so.
Okay.
And the last upgrade didn't cover that?
Nope, the lift stations were not part of the update to the plant.
The next one is automatic light switches in the public restrooms and any light switches in the city hall that are not automatic, meaning when you walk in the room, it should turn on.
For touch.
So no touch, and I know it's in this room, in the administrative area, anywhere in this building, they all should be touchless. I noticed that last night, so when we came in for training, I had to turn the switches on. So that's something to think about there, maybe get a quote on that. We talked about a little bit earlier about the administration area, how it's set up right now and how I think you need to get more spacing, I believe. Is that part of that? What you put up there, that 20, I don't know. That number's inflated, I believe. I think
Yeah.
it's the wall.
We were looking at a couple things. One of the things was have permanent glass in the counter area on each window. And then you can use COVID money to raise the workspace areas so that they're secure, so you don't have to wear a mask while you're sitting at your desk. Some of the confusion is on one of the building plans that we had submitted.
Mike.
One of the building plans that we had submitted or commented on, the workspaces for planning and zoning and for Burchard sits, they were moved further out into the big room. Part of the reason for that was to make them basically the same size as they were. And then for where, y'all know where Cheryl sits, she has to get out of her desk to go see the counter. The idea was to have that wall pushed out another 2 to 3.5 feet, something like that, so that she could see people at the counter. Right now she can't, unless they're at the counter directly way across from her. We're not sure what happened with the building plan, but the spaces that were ultimately constructed were smaller than what was requested. I know John Kolstad had provided information to High Tech with the plan revision, and part of it was it changed because of where the windows were located. So the short story is the spaces were smaller than what was anticipated. And if there's a funding source to help alleviate that, to make them compliant with the world we live in today, we could use some of this money to do that. So the idea was to have it, you'd move it out a little bit and you'd have glass on there so people could sit at their desks without masks on. I can't speak to why that plan changed. I've seen 2 plans, and so we're looking into that to see where what decision or where that was made to tighten those up.
I think when we were on the building committees, that was always supposed to be glass in there initially.
Yeah.
But I don't understand how that would be a COVID-related expense, making the offices. I don't understand that. I understand the glass,
Yep.
but extending the offices and so you can see the window, that has nothing to do with COVID?
Well, it does. It's twofold. It's to correct what we thought we were getting versus what we got, and then to raise and put an eye-level glass panel on the existing low counters that we have now. That part of it would be COVID-related.
That part
Yep.
only, not
Yep,
the...
not the whole thing, no.
not the extension,
Correct.
the office.
Right, those will have to be more identified in that. The next item would be fire department armor radios. Those are in my 2021 budget to purchase. Actually, it says 5, but there's 4. Radio communications is part of COVID, and we've been phasing out a lot of our radios. Police have already transferred over to the new radios, and right now we can't get ours fixed. So every year we usually have 2 or 3 that start to. It costs more to fix them because they don't have the parts. So that item there could be whatever we can order 1, 2, or 3, or none, but then it would take it off the capital outlay from the fire department for 2021. The next item, no questions, the EOC downstairs update, maybe start working on that because that's part of an emergency response is having EOC available if needed. EMS COVID supplies, I could purchase more supplies to have a bigger inventory if this were to come around again over the winter time. Payroll for the next 3 months for me, I've been averaging about 12 hours a month for emergency management payroll. So just moving forward, it'll probably be about the same. Fire department EMS response vehicles, similar to Public Works. When we go to some of the EMS calls, even though in the fire truck we're wearing masks at times. An EMS vehicle, another to respond to calls we had another COVID call yesterday, just so the guys don't have to drive together or use their own personal vehicle to respond to a COVID call and then have to get back in that vehicle and go home and then their family gets in the vehicle. So there's just an option that would, another expenditure that could be put under the CARES Act that we can also take out of the fire department capital outlay for 2023. And then our park and rec vehicles, same situation. TJ brought it up that they're looking for another vehicle, but if you get them another vehicle, now they don't have to ride together. If you want to talk about it, you can. But that also is under the CARES Act.
Initially, why that was in the budget was to replace the 08 Chevy that we have, which was hand-me-down from the Public Works Department. It is what we used for our transfer tank for our diesel. What I am planning on to do now with that new truck is to use it as more of a everyday workhorse. Still keep that 08 Chevy, just so we have the ability to have that transfer tank for diesel. But also with this COVID now, we only have 1 pickup for 2 maintenance employees. So this will give us an opportunity. If one of my guys is out in South Bay Park mowing, my other maintenance employee can go to Ace or run errands or do whatever he needs to do. So that's that story. Any questions?
So why is this vehicle necessary, a second vehicle necessary for the park and rec? I didn't quite understand.
I have 2 maintenance employees with 1 truck.
You have 2 employees
Yes.
and they each need a vehicle?
Through COVID, yes, and it's an 08 Chevy, and like I said, it's hand-me-down. It's been in the shop getting fixed. It was worked hard. It's a plow truck, and we use it all year round because it is a plow truck, but having 2 trucks would make it a lot easier to do our job in the Parks Department.
But we do have a, unless I misunderstood, we do have a pickup in there for park and rec, don't we?
Correct, but through the CARES Act, if
Take
it gets
it
taken
out.
out through the CARES Act, we can take that out of my budget.
But I don't think you're supposed to, if you have it budgeted, which Was it in 2020 or was it in 2021 that it was budgeted?
2021.
I just, my personal opinion is that we're kind of abusing when we start purchasing vehicles so that two people don't have to ride in the pickup together. To me, it looks like there will be a vaccine and that this won't be the case anymore. I can't say that it will be, but for us to be purchasing vehicles so two people can't, I'm not clear on that.
The main reason for purchasing another truck was not due to COVID. The main reason is because it's an 08, it's beat up, we use it all year round, we need a new truck regardless, but I'd like to keep that truck for a transfer tank for diesel. But in doing that, we have two trucks, so if we need an emergency run to ACE or whatever we need, they can ride in separate trucks.
I'm not opposed to purchasing the pickup. I don't want you to misunderstand that. I'm not sure why it would be a COVID-related expense. That's where I'm at.
Okay. Any other questions?
How much does this list add up to altogether?
171.
Well, no, the funding award is 171. I didn't have time to change all these numbers, but all these big numbers, I know the administrative change, COVID specs, that one's not going to be 21, but we're 85,000 over the 171. So you can pick and choose what you think is important and what direction you want to go with.
So when we come back next week to
Yeah.
the next budget meeting, this will be,
Well, it depends on what you want to, I mean, it's not my decision.
we
It's,
can go home and.
yeah, play with it. Yep.
And then next week we can come
Yeah,
back and.
and say, okay, you know, maybe the
yell
fire
at each
department,
other.
2 radios, and for example, like the fire department EMS response vehicle, the Relief Association is planning on purchasing a vehicle in 2021, a utility vehicle, but not an EMS vehicle, but maybe we can compromise and split it, so there's an option there too. So there's a lot of different things.
Can I make a comment? And I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but I probably will. In my working career, when we had to do a lot of estimating for big jobs, and I had a guy that I worked for and worked with for a while, and whenever he'd do an estimate for a multi-million-dollar job, it looked just like your sheet.
Right?
A 2 with a bunch of zeros behind it. Is there any way that you could get a little closer to what the actual cost is? Because when it's
Yep.
presented like this, you know what I mean? It's just
Yep.
like we
No, I can do that. I have the turnout gear quote, I have the radios quote, I've got, you probably have the sewer quote.
you know,
Yep, and I've got the truck quote.
you know, I know what you're trying to
Yep.
do here, but you
Just
know,
make it easier for you to read it.
yeah, well,
That's
it just
all.
makes it look more legitimate is what I'm saying, when you got some exact numbers.
Well, that's why it's preliminary.
Yeah, I know.
I just have one other question. There's 21,000 for administration.
Well, that's
area?
what I said. That's not accurate, because we didn't have enough time to
That
talk
would be
today.
just the glasses and the.
Yeah, so that,
non-extension
you know, that could
office.
be, 2,800, well, the glass is expensive, so, or your glass was expensive, right? So it probably is like $2,500, I bet.
One other question,
Yep.
and then I'll shut up. Because we don't know, we're not living in your world every day. Can you prioritize these things for us? What you guys would do first?
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that, we don't know. We don't know what's more important to your day-to-day
The
needs.
one thing you want to look at, though, is what can you do that you can take off capital outlay, that's my personal opinion.
Right,
If we can
yep.
take something down the road, why not? If it answers all the questions and under the guidelines of the COVID,
Add a column and
Why
say
not?
impacts the budget.
Right.
you know?
So I guess at this point, we do have a reporting deadline coming up.
Correct.
The 40,000 is what we've already spent on payroll and PPE, so we'd like to report that as we use our COVID money for that item. We can always decide later whether or not to apply these other things to it. So I guess what I'd like to do is get permission to go ahead and report our expenditures under the grant that we've already incurred.
So moved.
Mike, do you want to add the antenna into that?
I'm sorry, say that?
Do you want to add the antenna into that?
And the antenna? Yeah, because we've already installed that, we're just waiting for the bill. Otherwise, we'll be reporting 0 expenditures on the 9th. So we've got about the 40,625 plus the 14,000.
I'll make that motion again to include.
I'll
both of
second
those.
it.
And I have a listing here I can pull up that shows what makes up that 40,000. And the assumption we're going under is we've got, $40,645.26. This yellow column in the middle, we received a $5,000 grant from Sourcewell. And I'd like to close that out and apply. We bought some COVID test kits and some PPE to balance it out. That would pretty much take care of the money that we've received from Sourcewell. And then the other thing we've got going on is we do have a grant, the Assistance to Firefighters grant we applied for earlier this year that we have not received any notice on. Since we don't know if we have that or not, or what that ultimate amount would finally be, I'm going to list it as 0. But then the other items we have on here are things, this is all labor, payroll costs that we associated directly with our response to the pandemic. That's eligible underneath this for reimbursement, so we should get reimbursed for it. We've bought some equipment so people can work outside the office. We've also bought a lot of face masks, disinfectants, gloves, sanitizer by the gallon, hand washing stations, portable hand washing, safety gloves, just thermometers. We have to take our temperature every day to make sure we're not sick, and just a whole bunch of stuff. So we've been keeping a running total of all this stuff, and we've spent $40,645.26 through today that we paid for. Now, this does not include the antenna. We know that's coming. We're just waiting for the bill. So what we'd propose to do is let's go ahead and apply what I've shown towards the Sourcewell grant and report. In this instance, it'd be the 34,425. There you go. It's the Excel spreadsheet. And go ahead and keep our reporting current. That's what we're asking to do. These other items, the Public Works communication, the turnout gear, those would be separate motions for approval, and then we would apply them to this grant when we do our September reporting. Okay?
So you're asking for a motion to go ahead and report this part at this point?
Correct, and there is a motion to do that.
Dave made.
Yeah.
And John seconded.
I seconded it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what we'd like to do. And then we're current.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Sure.
The BDA antenna for the armor system, there were some unforeseen things that happened with that. One is it's plugged into a regular outlet, not a generator outlet. There wasn't one in the garage where they installed it, so we have to have that circuit switched. The other thing is that there is no ground wire going to that outlet, so we got to make sure that that system is grounded in case of a lightning strike. So there was some unforeseen, so if we are holding off, is that my understanding, Mike, until we get the bill?
Are you sure about that? No ground wire in an outlet?
The actual system has to be grounded. I shouldn't say ground to the circuit, the ground
Like
to
a
the
ground
actual
rod
system.
and
Yeah, ground
solid
rod,
wire,
ground.
number 6 in the ground? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Can I
So-
ask a question?
Sure.
Are we done with that? I don't understand the police expenditures for this year. Are you still getting a police car?
I've got 2 that are coming in
that are
next
coming?
month.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
They,
I just-
because of COVID, they were supposed to be in March, and now they're finally coming in September.
Isn't that everything? Okay, I just wondered.
Yep. As a matter of fact, one is at Hibbing Ford right now. We're waiting for the other one to come in.
Eric, are you talking about that grounding and so forth? Are you tying that to the COVID?
That's and I think we should, with the EOC, part of the EOC costs, we should tie that to the COVID.
And that's how much roughly?
I don't have an amount on that yet.
Okay.
I got to talk to Jim's Electronics, or Jim's Electric.
Does that affect your motion?
No.
I don't,
No.
I think we were holding off on that bill, correct?
Right, we were holding off on that bill.
Okay, I just wanted you to aware that there was some unforeseen stuff that came up.
Thank you.
And when we get the final bill, then we'll report it as such when we pay it.
Can I ask one question that I'm sorry, that I heard about the well for the fire, the water for the fire in here, adding a screen?
You want to address that?
And, I mean, this is like brand new. That's like buying a car and there's rocks in the gas tank and you got to do something to fix it before
Yeah.
you can use it.
That isn't the only issue we've had.
I'm just saying warranty here, I mean, or it isn't acceptable.
When they did the original spec on the well, they put in a certain size screen, and the aggregate material that they got into was smaller. So they were pulling sand into the well when they were running it. So they had to go in and install a smaller screen into the system. And we were told that's our cost.
I'm not sure that should be our cost, to tell you.
Want to address the other sand issue too, Ted?
The other thing is you'll notice around that well there, the sand is actually, the ground is actually getting a
Sinking?
depression around it. Has been filled back up and has got another depression in it. And I think that's all due to because of that sand that was pulled down along the casing. So we still got an ongoing problem where we've got to add more dirt into that, around that well. I hope it stops, but I don't know.
Where's the sand showing up in the building here? In filters?
It's
or
not,
something?
this is when they did the initial pumping. They had that big pumper that was sitting here testing it. They were actually pulling sand out with the water. It's not that it's ongoing going. When they put the new screen in, they stopped it, so.
There was sand in the toilets.
Was there sand in the toilets?
Yeah, twice.
And maybe that's in the system, we're still pulling some, but that well should not, because you gotta remember, there's 2 wells here. There's a fire well out back, and then there's a smaller well right here just out the back that's your domestic water. Flushing the toilet, the sinks in the bathrooms. So they're 2 different wells, and the well that they had to put the bigger screen is the big well for the fire, so. This sand and that might be an ongoing issue, it might be something to have to address in the future too, I don't know.
If it takes a motion, but I don't think we should be paying for this stuff because we just moved into this place.
I agree with Dave.
Yeah.
We should certainly
So the
question it.
motion would be that we don't think it's,
Well, we have a bill, and you will be getting, I think in the next regular council meeting, you will be getting a change order for that well screen, so.
I think,
Time to address it. Don't run away, Ted. Do you want to talk about sewer rates? You going to be bringing up sewer rates to Public Works?
Yes, we are looking at, that was one of the questions early on by the council, should we be looking at sewer rates? So we're going to actually discuss it at Public Works and hopefully come up with a recommendation. We're looking at what past history is, where we've been at, and where we go from here, so.
I'm not sure if this is for Mike or you, Ted, but between the 2 of you, I haven't seen anything in the budget for maintenance and repairs and stuff to this building for '21.
Operation and maintenance, I don't know where it is in there, but it should be in your general government part of the
It
building.
should be under general government. We can follow up on
Not
that.
for today, but
Yep.
if you could have an answer for that for next week. Does that make sense? I realize to say some of these questions are, and expect an answer instantly is not good.
There's lots of little issues. I mean, example for the council and the staff. Chip called me one night, and it's during the storm, and there's no lights on in the building. The generators here runs the fire suppression well, his garage doors, so he can get out of his garage doors, and a few lights, and then down in the EOC, it runs the EOC. It doesn't run the whole building. So if you come in here, he was coming in to do a report on what was happening. He couldn't do it in the office because he had no lights, the computer system, the security system, all of that doesn't work because that's not part of the generator. So the generator was sized just to run part of this building.
So can I just make a
You
comment?
didn't bring your candle with you, did you?
I was just wondering if I can make a comment that something that the devil's in the details. Okay, we just went through this building. And I know we had a committee, but there's all these little details. And everybody's looking at the pictures, the drawings, and they're seeing the nice building. But the details are missing for a lot of these things. And so now we're going over to the fire hall. And I just hope we're not going to repeat this whole exercise again. So I know I have a set of drawings for the fire hall, and they're really detailed. I don't have a set of electrical drawings. What other things do we need, like a verbal description of the work that High-Tech's going to do? Do we need that? Because I don't want to have us go through this in 6 months and they'll say, well, that wasn't part of our deal and there's nothing to point to. We don't, I mean, usually you buy a car and they give you pages of it's got this rear end, these size tires, that type of deal. It's this color. I haven't seen anything. I don't know what their purchase order said.
Is W. Winseth our engineer on the job?
Yeah, they look pretty good. And I'm sorry for bringing it up in the middle of the
but
budget meeting,
shouldn't
but
those kind of be directed to Winseth? Shouldn't they be the third-party go-between?
I don't know. That's probably a good question. You know, just so we don't run through this again.
Well, I mean, if there are things that are forgotten on there, I don't think it should all fall on High-Tech's lap. I think engineering should be part of that circle.
That was one of the questions that Mike had for me today. Do you have a set of blueprints for this building? I don't.
Yeah, we should have as-built for this building.
We've never received them. It's one of the questions.
But that's not a High-Tech issue. That's
No,
our
but
engineering.
that's one of the issues. And the same thing with the fire hall is we want a set of accurate
Yeah.
as-built. We've referred back to those as-built that we had for the previous
And
city
I
hall.
think he's preparing them per our last meeting. So, you know, they should come.
It's just, that's the kinds of things that we are trying to follow through. The question on even the generator, when we were going through design, I said, make sure the generator is big enough to run the whole building. And we got something that was less than that. I realized we had a budget, but it's still less than, I just want everybody to understand these things.
Ted,
I think, you know, engineering is a big part of that. And the spec sheet is what the
Exactly.
guys bid off of.
Exactly.
And if it is spec'd out on their sheet, they're definitely liable for it.
Right.
But if they're not, it's not them dropping the ball.
Right.
It's really an engineering.
And I just bring it up because you three guys are going to be working on it, and just make sure you got something that you can check it and see, well, yeah, it was supposed to have this.
But I would, again, kind of put that on the city engineer
Right.
to kind of cover ourselves on it. And maybe that should be told to them.
well, I think
That
the
should be
issue,
told to them.
one of the issues we're going to run into is what's the right balance between cost and what we're actually getting. And I think that had a lot to do with the decision to go with the smaller generator, Ted. Because when we originally talked about it, you know, the request was for a diesel generator. And the reason for that is because propane and natural gas is considered an interruptible source, which can be shut off. Your gas can be shut off. Whether it's a break or there's a more significant need somewhere else, there's a risk this could be turned off, and we wouldn't have the generator working anyways. So that's why we were looking at diesel, but because of cost considerations, it went with, what, a 40,000? That's a 40 kW natural gas. So that's how we ended up with that one.
And City Hall lost power, huh? I did not know that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, the city was out for what, 2 hours maybe? 2, 3?
Well, by the time it was back on, it was 11:30.
Okay, so it was a lot longer than that. So I had some pictures from the drone footage of where the storm went through near Moonlight, and they wanted it at the National Weather Service, so I figured, okay, I'll run up here and download it, but nothing was working, so.
Your whole computer system?
Yeah, I couldn't even get on the computer, nothing was working, so I had to go back to the fire hall,
It worked for about 4 hours.
bring stuff to work to make it to work, and I finally got it out, but,
It worked for a little bit because I got an email that said, oh, your backup just went down.
yeah, so that's something we might want to consider in the future, because we are building an EOC, and if something ever did happen in the city, yeah, the EOC is going to work, but then you're going to have other support staff that's going to need.
Well, you're gonna walk downstairs with a flashlight.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know what the difference in cost is, but
Yeah.
maybe down the road we can look at some grants or something, or trade-off or something.
You want something, Patty? Come on up.
Thank you. Patty Norgard, 37104 Bunkhouse Road. You know that old saying, you're going to pay me now, you're going to pay me later, or you're going to pay me. And so this has been really great information and good conversation. I call the space between the admin and the, what do you call them, the little desks where we come up, the ballroom, because it's big enough for a dance floor in there. So, great conversation. However, I just want to talk just a little bit about the CARES Act. And this I found out yesterday. So if there is any money left in your $172,000, you may want to consider giving it back to the Unified Fund, because here's the way it works. Currently, we have 15 businesses in Cross Lake that have applied for a grant through the CARES Act through the county. And so, say for example, we had $30,000 that wasn't spent out of that 172, we could give that to Bladek, who writes the grants, or who looks at the grants that have been applied for, and that $30,000 would go directly to those businesses who had requested it. Now, if the amount of the businesses requested was over $30,000, then there would be a larger pool of monies for all of our businesses in Cross Lake. And one of the questions that I had written down here was, listening to your conversation, was what has COVID got to do with planning the budget? And so when we think of what we can do to help our businesses, if there is any funds left over in that $172,000, I suggest that we give it back to the Bladek Fund so that we can help our businesses. That was it.
Thank you, Patty.
Yep.
Yep.
So every township and every city gets the opportunity to receive this funding. So we didn't go to Manhattan Beach or Fairfield Township for their funds, and most of those don't really have COVID expenses, maybe a couple computers here or there. So a lot of money will be going back to the county. County commissioner reached out to everybody and said, if you don't spend the money, it's going to come back, we're going to grab it, and then it'll be used for exactly what Patty's talking about, so.
Is it even legal for us to give to a third party? I guess it would be considered.
Well, we wouldn't give it to them. Basically, we would forfeit it and give it back to the county would take it. We wouldn't use it, and then the county would grab it.
And for example, Pequot Lakes had about the same amount of funds, and they just automatically said, hey, we're going to give $40,000 back to help service our business community.
So, Patty, just if we would give, a balance, 50,000, or I don't know what the number is, but would it go back? If it goes to the county, will it come back to Cross Lake businesses? Because I wouldn't give it to not that I wouldn't give it to the county, but I would want to make sure that monies went to the Cross Lake businesses.
When we had a conversation with Tyler Glenn yesterday, who's the executive director of Bladek, those businesses in Cross Lake that have applied for the grant, they would be the first ones to receive whatever we had allocated. And if the grants were larger than what we were going to give back, then there's a larger pool of money that Bladek could tap into so that none of our businesses would be left out.
I think there's two different.
Yeah, there's two different
Okay.
programs.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with the 172?
So the one that Patty's talking about, we would have to direct the funds to go in that direction. The other one would be
It's
forfeited.
different.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so Tyler Glenn is going to call you.
sure.
But my reason for it is when we talk about, we don't know what the pandemic is how it's going to affect us budget-wise. When we think of our business, and a lot of them are struggling today, we want to make sure that we have some sort of resource or something that we say we have supported our businesses.
I've heard that argument
Thank you.
laid out a few different ways. And the other side of that argument is saying, well, this money was designated or awarded to the city across the lake based on the population, the $75.34. And theory is, how do we get that to get the biggest bang for those people that generated the funds? And one argument I've seen in a webinar I looked at was use it to do things within your city that directly impacts the taxes you might otherwise charge those same people. So it's really a hard decision to decide, do you want to carve out a select group of businesses or do you want to help everybody?
I think I would look at the non-essential businesses that were closed and were really affected by the COVID.
So Patty's talking about the unified fund, the money going to the unified fund.
Yep.
We'd have to.
Chip was talking about it going right back to the county. Those are two different
They're
things.
two different
The
things,
county is
yep.
not the unified fund.
So the money going back to the county, Shark, could not potentially come back to Cross Lake. It's going to go wherever they want.
That's right. Yeah. And I will check with Pequot to see if they allocated their funds out of their monies that they got for City of Clover. I'll check.
Yeah, I think if the county gets it, though, you can't allocate anything. I think they got it in their bucket.
What did you say?
I say if the county takes the money back, you're not going to have a choice
Yeah,
on
no,
the
it goes to
allocation.
the savings share, it goes
Yeah.
to the Bladek Unified Fund.
Yeah, so,
Well, that term forfeiture is pretty clear.
yeah.
It's not yours anymore.
Are we back to the budget? I got another question. Tennis court ceiling and stuff, we have nothing in there, but we have the pickleball courts expenditures all in there. What happened to what we did in the tennis court? Why isn't that in the tennis court seal and paint?
You're right, that is complete, but we're still waiting to pay that because we have yet to see the USDA grant. And we just got this bill, 2 weeks ago from Lee Sports.
Yep.
So it still has to get approved by council, but there again, we're still waiting on the USDA grant as well. They have to come back and finish. They're supposed to put blended lines on all 4 courts. They only put it on 2. So the USDA came back and said, for us to give you the $10,000 in USDA grants, you have to finish what you were obligated, or what that was in the quote. So they're coming back tomorrow, putting on the 2 remaining blended lines, and wrap it up, and hopefully get that paid soon.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Then I just have one other thing. You have over 3% wage increase in the budget, is that correct?
The placeholder I have for non-union is 3%. The union contract we're currently under, we're obligated to just under 5%. There's, in both union contracts, the Teamsters and AFSCME, there's a 2% adjustment between years, and there's a 3% adjustment between steps. And those were negotiated 2.5 years ago. We've got another year of that contract yet.
I'm just thinking with unemployment, people losing their businesses and all that stuff, I think it would not quite be right if we gave over a 3% wage increase.
That's not our choice. With the union contracts,
I'm
we don't have a
talking
choice.
about in the other parts, and the other the non-union.
And they're not over 3%. They're built in at 3% at a base rate, and then certain individuals that have been here a certain amount of time get longevity. So they get up to 2% longevity, depending on how long they've been here. So I factor a percent in for the base rate, so we have a common item we're looking at, and then we handle the longevity separately, which is what we've always done here.
I don't know how everybody else feels, but I just think over 3% is, just for the times, because of the